Picture a plain farm in Holmes County, Ohio. No power lines running to the barn, no humming steam sterilizer, no electric lab gear, none of the equipment a mushroom company will tell you is required. And yet, somewhere on a shelf in that barn sits a bag of cheap white powder that does the same work as all of it, for about $3. Let's not sit on the answer, because you came here for it. That powder is hydrated lime, plain builder's lime, calcium hydroxide, the kind masons have used for centuries. You stir a little into a barrel of cold water, soak your straw in it overnight, and the high pH of that bath knocks out the mold and bacteria that would otherwise choke your mushrooms before they start. It clears the field so the mushroom gets there first. That's the whole trick. A barrel, some straw, and a $3 bag. But how a low-power farm turns that into baskets of mushrooms, and why this method fits the plain way of farming so neatly, is the part worth staying for. Here's some context most videos skip. A lot of Amish and Old Order Mennonite families didn't start out as produce growers at all. Plenty were dairy farmers. Then, around the early 2000s, the milk economics fell apart, and in places like Geauga County, Ohio, the local cheese plants began demanding Grade A setups with electric refrigeration in the milking parlor. For families whose faith limits that kind of technology, that was a wall. So many of them walked away from dairy and turned to growing food instead. They built their own market for it, too. The wholesale produce auction, where dozens of small growers pool their harvest and sell it in bulk, was pioneered by Amish and Mennonite farmers in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, back in 1984. And those auctions now anchor plain farming communities across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and well beyond.
So when you drop a low-cost growing method into that world, it lands on ready ground. No electricity needed, no machine to break down, and no technician to call. Cheap inputs, family labor, and a crop you can sell by the crate a few miles from home. That is the exact shape of farming these communities already run. A specialty crop like mushrooms fits that setup well, since it earns good money off a small footprint and never asks for acres of open field. Now, I owe you some honesty because this subject attracts a lot of tall tales online. I could not find solid evidence that lime pasteurization is some old Amish secret handed down through the community. It isn't. It's an appropriate technology method used by small growers all over the world, from village co-ops in Asia to backyard tinkerers in Ohio. What is true is that the method fits plain farming almost perfectly, and that low-input growers of every kind reach for it for the same practical reasons. So I won't sell you a myth about a hidden formula. The method is the real story, and it stands up fine on its own. So why does a bath of alkaline water grow mushrooms? It comes down to a head start. Straw is coated in mold spores and bacteria. Wet it and add your mushroom spawn with no prep, and those competitors wake up first and take the food before the mushroom gets going. Sterilizing with heat and pressure kills nearly everything, but that needs power and equipment. Pasteurizing is the gentler road. You knock the competition way down without wiping out every living thing, and you hand your mushroom a nearly empty room to move into. There's a rule worth burning into memory here. You can get away with pasteurizing a lean substrate like plain straw because there isn't much in it for contaminants to fight over. The moment you enrich it, adding grain or bran to chase a bigger yield, you have to fully sterilize instead. Now the mold wants that rich food just as badly as your mushroom does, and a gentle lime bath won't hold it back. Lime does its job with pH instead of heat. Raise the water to around pH 12 or 13, and most molds and bacteria simply cannot survive it. But this is the part that surprised me the first time I heard it. Oyster mushroom mycelium can shrug off that high pH long enough to colonize the straw. It moves in, threads its white web through the whole pile, and by the time the pH drifts back down, the mushroom already owns the block. Peter O., who wrote the Standard Manual on Low-Tech Mushroom Growing, calls this whole family of methods appropriate technology, and the phrase fits. You're not fighting nature with brute force, you're just tilting the odds. I'll walk you through how it goes, because the details decide everything. You take a food-grade barrel or even a 5-gallon bucket. You chop your straw into short pieces, a couple inches long, so the mushroom can jump from piece to piece. You pack it into a mesh bag or an old pillowcase so you can lift it out later without fishing around in cloudy water. Then the lime. The common ratio is small, roughly 6 grams per gallon, which is less than most people guess. A couple of teaspoons in a big bucket. You want pure hydrated lime, not the garden lime sold for lawns. Garden lime is a different chemical. It won't raise the pH enough, and it can even slow your mushroom down. Wear gloves and keep it clear of your eyes while you mix, because the same alkalinity that kills mold is rough on skin. You submerge the straw, weigh it down so nothing floats above the waterline, and you walk away, 12 to 24 hours, depending on who you ask. Overnight is the classic move. In the morning, you lift the bag out, let it drain, and check the moisture. This is the step people rush and regret. You want field capacity, a fancy way of saying wet but not dripping. Squeeze a handful. If water streams out, it's too wet. If you can coax out only a few drops, that's the sweet spot. Then you mix in your spawn, the mushroom starter, right into the damp straw. Pack it into a bag or bucket with a few small holes for air, set it somewhere dark and room temperature, and let it work. Room temperature for most oyster strains means the 60s or low 70s Fahrenheit. Too cold and everything crawls to a stop. Too warm and the contaminants speed up faster than your mushroom can, which is the race you are trying to win. This is where most people trip, and it isn't the part they expect. They fuss over the lime and the soak, then drown the grow with good intentions. Too much water is the single most common way a beginner kills a batch. Soggy straw goes sour, bacteria move back in, and the whole thing turns to slime. Mushrooms need moisture, but they also need to breathe, and waterlogged straw suffocates them. The other quiet killer is skipping fresh air at the wrong moment. While the mycelium colonizes in the dark, it's fine with stale, carbon dioxide-heavy air. It prefers it, oddly enough. But once the straw is fully colonized and you want mushrooms to form, the rules flip. Now it needs fresh air exchange and a little humidity. Growers who don't switch gears end up with sad, stringy mushrooms, all long stems and tiny caps, because the fruit is gasping for oxygen and stretching to find it. Contamination has a face, and its color is green. Open a bag and see patches of forest green powder, and that's usually trichoderma, a mold that loves the exact conditions you're providing and outcompetes your mushroom for them. Clean hands, clean containers, and a strong dose of spawn are your best defense. More spawn means faster colonization and less room for the green stuff to settle in. As for the payoff, oyster mushrooms are the workhorses here, and beginners start with them for good reason. The Chinese call them pingu, the Japanese call them hiratake, and cultures across the world grow them because they're forgiving and quick. Growing from known spawn also sidesteps the biggest danger of wild mushrooms, which is misidentifying something you should never eat. Never put a wild mushroom in your mouth unless you can name it with total certainty. On wheat straw, growers commonly see biological efficiency somewhere between 50 and 100%, which in plain terms means a block of straw can produce roughly half to nearly its own dry weight in fresh mushrooms across a few flushes. Richer materials like cottonseed hulls can push that number higher.
Can you really pull 50 pounds in 14 days? Here's the honest answer. Those numbers describe a good batch at a small farm scale, not one bucket on your porch. 14 days is realistic for the fruiting window, the stretch from when little pins appear to when you're harvesting, and it can cover that first big flush after the straw finishes colonizing. It is not the time from day one. Colonization itself usually takes 1 to 3 weeks before anything fruits, so the full trip runs closer to a month or more. And 50 pounds means a lot of straw, many blocks going at once, not a single container. If someone shows you one bucket producing 50 pounds in 2 weeks flat, they're selling you something. Your results also swing on the small stuff: the mushroom variety, the freshness of your spawn, the temperature of your room, how clean your setup is, the substrate you picked. Get those right, and this cheap method holds its own against expensive gear. Get sloppy, and no amount of lime will save the batch. What keeps pulling me back is how ordinary the whole thing is. There's no miracle here, and no secret being kept from you on purpose. There's a cheap bag of lime, a barrel of water, and a pile of straw that most farms treat as trash. Somebody paid attention, ran the math, and saw that the expensive step wasn't always necessary. That instinct, using what you have and skipping what you don't need, is the thread that runs straight through plain farming, and it's a decent way to think about a lot more than mushrooms. If you've got a bucket, a bag of lime, and a little space, you're most of the way there already. The mushrooms handle the hard part. They've been turning dead plants back into food for millions of years, quietly, whether anyone is watching or not. If this video was informative, then comment yes. That motivates us to produce more videos like this.